Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike here. The DRF race of the day for Wednesday, October the 4th, race number 7 at Belmont at the Big A. It's the rescheduled Grade 2 Pilgrim. 2-year-olds going 1.1 on the inner turf. Let's take a look at this field. This race might have some Breeders' Cup implications regarding the juvenile turf. 9 entered. The number 3, Agate Road, 3-1 for trainer Todd Pletcher, came from left field to win at Saratoga last time out. A very explosive late burst. Sometimes those late runners can be at the mercy of pace and trip.
Yeah, certainly seems like one of the ones in here, Dan, but you're right. I mean, this horse is going to need, it feels like anyway, just based on his 2 appearances so far, he's going to need a trip in this race. He has shown 0 speed in his 2 starts.
Let's throw up the Timeform US pace projector and the potential pace. The 2 Troppenhagen ran on Saturday at Laurel. I'm not expecting him to come back in here, so you're going to want to visit timeformus.com once scratches are made official. This pace projector will automatically update. I'm not sure if the 4 Tiffery is going to go to the lead, Mike. I think the 5 BD Saints is going to be pretty aggressive, and the 6 Get Spooled is not a slow horse either.
I agree with that. I mean, if this 2 doesn't come back in this race, and it feels like they probably won't, I didn't necessarily see the 4 going to the front here, although that horse certainly was pretty handy in his turf debut last time. I thought DB Saints would go forward. I wouldn't even be surprised if the 1, Liam's Journey, gets a little closer to the pace this time.
That's a very good point because Liam's Journey is stretching out off 2 sprint efforts at Kentucky Downs. And here is the most recent start. It's a maiden special weight going 6.5 furlongs. He ran a lot better than he did in his debut. He had a little bit of early trouble. He's going to end up finishing second. There was a solid pace for him to attack, but this is the kind of horse that Michael Maker specializes in, right? Stretching out on the turf.
Yeah, exactly. Overall, I thought Irad, who rode Liam's Journey in this race, I thought he gave this horse a great trip and ride. Here he is in mid-stretch, Dan. He's got a real shot at this thing, and he's just not going to be able to get the horse on the lead here. He's going to settle for second, but it was a step in the right direction. I think it showed that he can run a little bit. He's got a great post here on the inside. There's a good trip coming for this horse.
We're expecting Troppenhagen to scratch. If he does run, he earned a respectable debut buyer at Monmouth Park, but that was against a weak field. In the Laurel Futurity, he was the beaten favorite. He went right to the front, and they ran right by him. If you want to make an excuse for that race, I did talk to several jockeys coming off. They thought the rail on the inner paths were not great on the turf at Laurel on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll see if he comes back, Dan. I didn't want to bet him, even with the excuse for that most recent start. His debut was fine, but it's not a race that I was really taken with. I did not think he beat a good field that day.
Agate Road, the number 3, was washed off in his career debut. He ran just fine with a late rally to just missed. Here's his second lifetime start. Maiden special weight, Saratoga, 1.16 miles. He has got a ton of work to do. He's got to pass them all at the 3/16, and he finally gets into gear in the late stages and runs by them all. The runner-up would come back to run third in an off-the-turf maiden special with a 75 buyer.
Yeah, he ran fine in here. You saw there in the upper stretch there, a horse sort of forced him out a little bit as he was trying to rally, but he went right through that, got up at the end, and I thought he got up relatively easily, actually, Dan. It was a pretty good performance, I thought, from this horse. He's been green in both starts so far. He was green in the dirt debut. He was still green last time, but he runs at the end. If he can work out a trip in here, he's going to be tough.
The tactical number 4, Tiffery, was bet hard for the debut on dirt at Ellis Park. Just didn't really fire his best shot after a little bit of an awkward start. Much better on the stretch out, second time out and switching to turf. This is a mile race at Kentucky Downs, and I like that he settled in behind a pretty solid pace, Mike. They went 23:46 going a mile here, and this horse kept up with no problem. And once he got into the clear after that good trip, he finishes it off nicely.
Yeah, I really like this performance from him. He powers past this field in the stretch and wins it going away. I think it's actually a good sign. He didn't run first time out. I think it's a good sign that they bet him for that race, Dan, because his pedigree is all turf. Brendan Walsh switched him right over for this race at Kentucky Downs. He smashed that field.
Here's BD Saints, the number 5, who was very green in his first 2 starts. He showed glimpses at both Ellis Park and Saratoga, but didn't appear like he knew what he was doing. Here's the second start for Linda Rice against New York-bred maiden specials, and he relaxed much better on the lead. Way more professional rating up front than in his prior starts, and he just wins this race very easily. He did set a legitimate opening quarter before coming to hand. Maybe he's finding himself, but now he's got to do it against open graded stakes competition.
It feels like a significant step up in class. Maybe this race didn't come up that strong, Dan. And I agree with everything you said about about him. He obviously improved in that most recent start. Way more professional, won very easily. I can't say that I love the field that he beat. I didn't love that it was sort of a bunched up group there behind this horse, but they were well behind him. He was pretty dominant in that race.
Gets Spooled received a clever ride from Jose Lezcano to win his debut. It was a race with no pace whatsoever, and he got this son of hard spun right to the front, and he was able to just hold them off to win. Second time out in the With Anticipation, while he was beaten by the filly Galabrand, kind of made an early move on the outside into a moderate pace. I think that's a race he could build off of, and he's another horse that can be tactical and just off the pace here.
I won't disagree with any of that, Dan. They did move early with him last time. The pace wasn't that fast, but the horses that ran 1-2 in there came from the back of the pack, and they ran by everybody at the end. So maybe this horse deserves a little bit of extra credit. I can't say that I'm sold on him. If he's some kind of a big price, I wouldn't argue too hard.
In some ways, I wonder if the key to the race is the 7 Triple Espresso for Todd Pletcher and Jose Ortiz, because this horse made his debut in the Kitten's Joy Stakes at Colonial. He took a lot of money, not surprising considering it's Todd Pletcher and Rapoli. This horse didn't break well at all. He was last and going nowhere at the 3/8 pole, and then he came with an eye-catching run to finish second. What do you make of that performance?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he actually ran really well, obviously, being a first-time starter against a bunch of experienced horses in a stakes race. That's just so much working against you. And listen, this horse came from way out of it. It's not like that was a total collapse race. He was really the only one who made up a bunch of ground in there. He obviously, to me, he ran way better than the figure suggests. And if he can work out some kind of a better trip in this race, he could be really, really dangerous.
Fulmineo, the number 8, won second time out for Arnaud de la Cour, moving from sprint to route and dirt to turf, and he did it quite easily at Colonial. I'm not sure about the field he beat, but once he actually got into the clear and got going, he was able to grind them down late. To me, he's progressive. I think there's a lot of upside here, and even more maturity, even maybe more distance down the road will work for this one.
Yeah, I think we kind of look at him the same way. I can't say that I loved him in here, Dan. I don't think 5-1 is the right price for me to take on him, but I guess he ran fine in that race.
Here's Spirit Prince, the number 9, running third in the With Anticipation. He ran okay in this race, considering that the runner-up came back to win the Grade 1 Summer with an 80 Beyer speed figure. Spirit Prince has now run well in both starts for Christophe Clement, and he's tactical enough that he can overcome this outside post position and get forward without losing too much ground.
I agree. I think he can get the right trip in here. I thought he got a good trip first time out, but I thought he actually ran pretty well that day. I thought he got another good trip in that With Anticipation that we just watched. The 1-2 finisher is pretty good, Dan. I know it was a filly who won it, but she might be all right. Carson's Run comes back to win a Grade 1 in his next start. This horse was not embarrassed by them. If he can get a trip from the outside, he could be right there at the end.
And we'll see that filly earlier on the Belmont at the Aqueduct card in the Miss Grillo. Before we take a look at our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time for the Grade 2 Pilgrim. Again, a race where you can go a lot of different ways. Tiferi really exploded past that field. I mean, if he didn't get out at that point, he would have just jumped over the top of them and won. Now he gets a little bit of a class test, but with that tactical speed, I think he's the kind of horse that's going to make his own trips.
I agree with all that, Dan. I mean, this is the kind of race where the favorites didn't really do a lot for me on paper anyway. I really liked what I saw from this horse in his turf debut, and I am betting him in this race.
Yeah, Agate Road, very impressive first time out. Want to see it again against tougher competition. BD Saints to me is kind of intriguing. I wonder if he's figured it out. And the fact that he has speed, I'm not expecting this pace to be fast. I expect him to be prominent when they turn for home, and I expect him to be a fair price. 4317 for Mike, 5389 for me in the Grade 2 Pilgrim. It's your Wednesday DRF race of the day. Good luck.